Good evening. If I could have everyone's attention for a moment. I've been told another elected official joined us. Did anybody see another elected official come in? So before I introduce Tammi Thomas to come up and introduce our next guest, I wanted to deliver a little message. Now, do you guys remember what we practiced? Right? Does everybody remember? Economic development. There it is. So it is my distinct pleasure to invite Tammi Thomas, the new META Vice President, to the stage, along with Governor Wes Moore for their conversation. Now, as they come on the stage here, I want you to know that Tammi is TEDCO's dynamic Chief Development and Marketing Officer.
TEDCO in the house! TEDCO! Oh, sorry.
I also wanted you to know that
I love it.
Tammi is so proud of the fact that her daughter is graduating next month from the Navy's nuclear propulsion program down in Charleston.
All right.
And we had 4 Army officers sitting at our table. But right now I'll say go Navy.
Go Navy!
Enjoy your conversation.
But since the governor is here, go Army, go Maryland.
There you go. There we go.
Governor Moore.
Hi, Tammi.
Okay.
Listen, I'm so happy to be here. This room is revved up. This is good. This is good. That's what I'm talking about. I'm so happy to be with you. This is great.
Okay, I'm going to try not to pass out. Going to do my daughter proud. Okay. Let's start with, I'm going to ask a question about you because so many people, this might be their first time in the room with you, talking about not just your strategies, but we want to get to know Governor Moore a little bit more. So, many people know me as a nerd. I think I'm a cool nerd. I love the library, And, sir, you are a prolific author. You've written 5 books. Can you tell us what inspired you to put pen to paper?
Oh, this is a good question. First, and honestly, I have to tell you, I really am thrilled to be with you up here. I'm excited. I'm grateful for the work that you are doing. I'm grateful for the work that TEDCO is doing.
Okay.
I'm grateful for the work this entire room is doing, and so honestly, this is not just important for me and exciting for me to talk about what does it mean and what is economic development, what is economic growth, what does Maryland leading and winning the next decade look like? To have a chance to be with you and with Pam and with Richard and just this entire team, I'm sincerely grateful, and I have to tell you, me becoming an author was interesting.
Okay.
Because I really have more of a quantitative mind than a qualitative mind, right? Numbers and data they come much easier to me than words. And in fact, so I'll tell you a true story. When I first started writing my first book, my mother calls me up. And my mother says to me, she says, listen, you know, I don't know if you've ever heard, but some people have these things called ghostwriters. And these ghostwriters, and she goes, no, with ghostwriters. I'm like, mommy, what are you saying? She said, I'm not saying anything. I'm just saying, you know, like, having a ghostwriter is not a bad thing.
I love it.
So I call up my editor, and I said to him, listen, I don't think, my mother doesn't think I can do this. And he said, what do you mean? He said, and I said, she keeps on talking about ghostwriters. And he says to me, he said, listen, I tell you what, write the first couple chapters. And he said, if you need help, we'll get you some help. So I said, great.
Yes.
So write the first couple chapters. And I sent it to him. And it took like a month for him to get back to me, so I was getting a little nervous. And finally, he sends me an email, and the email just simply said, this is exactly what I'm looking for, keep writing.
Oh my goodness.
And so I forwarded it to my mom, and I was like, "Ha!" But you know, but I mean, but so the writing thing was very, honestly, it was very accidental to me, the way I kind of fell into it. But I do think it was important, and it's something that I very much lean on now, and I think I will do for the rest of my life. Because he said something to me, my editor said something to me that I think was really important. Because at first I told him, even when I was doing the other Westmore, I said, I want to do like a 10-step guide and use data around a 10-step guide that every mentor and every parent should use. And he said to me, Wes, that sounds really interesting and all, but I said, I'm going to be honest with you. No one wants to read a parenting book by a 30-year-old with no children. I was like, that's a fair point. And he said, data will provide context.
Right.
Stories promote action. And you need to think about what is it that you want people to do. Is it providing the context?
Yes.
Or do you want to promote the action? And that was really the motivation, the framework that I wanted to take with the stories that I was able to tell,
Right.
with the books that I was able to write, and frankly, even with the policies that we then wanted to be able to put in place. Where again, I'm a data person. I always say I'm data-driven and heart-led. I don't move without data, and that will provide a context. But I need people to understand the humanity that we are trying to address in every single one of the policies that we're then trying to put forward.
Thank you for sharing that, Governor Moore. I can't stop saying Governor Moore. This is just awesome. And in fact, in that, I think you and I were having a short conversation at the table, and we were talking about how not only are you the first Black governor in the state of Maryland, you're only 5 in the nation's history, and only the 3rd one to have been elected. Can you expound a little bit about your inspiration to run?
I'm always humbled by that fact.
Yes.
And it's not lost to me, and it's also not lost to me that how many shoulders that I'm standing on right now.
Okay.
Right? The amount of people, the amount of work that had to go into making this thing real, where I know that the only reason that I was able to be successful, the only reason I can see higher is because the shoulders that I'm standing on are massive. That's how I'm able to see higher. And it's interesting for our inauguration, I try to be very intentional about the inauguration, where I remember inauguration morning, I wanted to start off at the docks in Annapolis. And the reason that we wanted to start there was, in addition to it being beautiful, that was one of the earliest enslavement ports
Yes. in
in this country's history. And started that morning with a wreath laying, and then marched with hundreds of other people. It was beautiful. And then marched from the docks up to the State House, where I would be sworn in a few hours later, and which, by the way, was a building that was built by the hands of enslaved people. And it was really important to pay homage to that fact, the same way where we're in an absolutely remarkable state, we're in a remarkable part of the state, and it should not be lost on anybody that where we are here in the Eastern Shore was also the birthplace and the initial grounds of people like Harriet Tubman.
Right. Yes.
Right? And and so you think about that, where it's powerful, it's something that is never lost on me. I also know that it wasn't why I ran, and it wasn't the assignment.
Okay.
That the assignment was never to be the first. The assignment was not to make history. And I also know that the people of this state, we ended up winning with more individual votes than any person who's ever run for governor in the history of the state of Maryland. And,
Okay, like,
but, and by the way, and I always say, you don't get to that number by just winning a demographic. And you don't get to that number by just winning Democrats. Right? We got to that number because we won Democrats, we won independents, and we won a good chunk of Republicans as well.
yes.
And I think why I say that is for this reason. For every single one of the people that ended up voting for myself and the Lieutenant Governor, Aruna Miller. They didn't vote for us because they knew we would make history.
Indeed.
They voted for us because they believed in our vision of dealing with the challenges and the opportunities in their life.
Yes.
And that's the thing that I continue to stay focused on in the work that we're doing right now.
Thank you so much. So Governor Moore, if we can expound on that a little bit, talk to us about your vision of what Maryland would look like in 2030 and how you plan to make sure that no one is left behind.
Yes. So first, I do want to be clear. This is going to be Maryland's decade.
Yes.
Period, full stop. And we've put the entire country on notice. Where, I'm very clear, I respect my colleagues and the other governors. I think they're all wonderful people. This is Maryland's time. This is a time when our state's going to move faster. This is a time when our state's going to be bold. And this is going to be a time, frankly, when our state is going to get rid of the false choices.
Okay.
Because I think that oftentimes in politics, and again, I say this with a lot of humility for the fact that, I've been a politician now for 94 days.
You're doing a good job.
Well, because I've been a public servant for much of my life. I just haven't been an elected official.
Right.
Right. And before I ran for office, I was an Army officer. All of my Army folks. By the way, it is very lonely being an Army officer in Maryland.
Go Navy.
This is a serious Navy town. I hang out. I end up going to the Naval Academy a lot because they're kind enough to let me work out at the Naval Academy. And I always laugh. I say, this place is so beautiful. And I said, but I need to know who to talk to about how you all are using taxpayer dollars to put up propaganda on the wall because they beat Army everywhere. I'm like, this propaganda must be dealt with.
Sir.
But so before I ran for office, I was an Army officer. I was a small business owner and a successful small business owner here in the state of Maryland, and I ended up running one of the largest poverty-fighting organizations in this country. And one of the things that always frustrated me about politics and policies were the false choices.
Yes.
That someone said that you have to somehow choose between having an economy that is going to be competitive or an economy that's going to be equitable. You don't.
Right.
In fact, you need one in order for the other to be real, right?
Yes.
That we have to both reduce regulatory red tape, we have to both aggressively allow for growth in our small businesses, we have to both go out and recruit and retain business entities and job creators inside the state of Maryland, and we need to make sure that the economic growth is being seen and felt by everybody within the state. These aren't competing ideas.
Yes.
We have to do both. The idea that somehow we are either going to find ways of being able to support businesses and support our entrepreneurs or support the workers. No, you need to do both in order for this thing to be real. And so we are going to move at a speed and at a pace where Maryland is going to be intentional about getting rid of the false choices that oftentimes align our politics and are used as distractions or used as the shiny objects that allow us to mark time and be okay with it, right? It allows us to be able to, for the past 10 years, for example, in the state of Maryland, we have watched how national GDP has grown by 23% over the past decade. The state of Maryland has grown by 11.
Unacceptable.
We're falling behind.
Yes.
And there's no reason for the state of Maryland to fall behind when you consider the assets that we have in the state of Maryland. I mean, this is the number one STEM producer in the entire country, right? Number two when it comes to PhDs in the entire country. This is the home of everything from APL and the home of the NSA and the home of Cyber Command and the home of Aberdeen Proving Grounds and the home of Johns Hopkins University and the home of 4 of the top HBCUs in America and the home of the Harvard. It's like, I think every acronym in the world exists in the state of Maryland. Why is Maryland falling behind anybody? We have better assets than anywhere else in the country. The challenge is we are asset rich and we are strategy poor. We have all these assets and we don't coordinate. We have all these assets and we're not leveraging. And so it's a core part of the reason why we as a team and as an administration, and by the way, I know y'all have had a chance to spend time with many of our cabinet secretaries that are here. This is the baddest group of leaders. And by the way, in case anyone's confused, bad means good. So when I say bad, it means they're really good. They're like, I can't believe you just said that. No, it means like you do not get more qualified, fired up, hard charging, and ready for the role than the list and the cabinet and the team that we built here. You've met many of them here today. And the reason that we're trying to take a different type of approach, and we're working as one government, we're working in a collaborative fashion, and we're working in coordination with the private sector, with the nonprofit sector, with the people, with labor, is because we know that if we can collectively come up with our core focus of the areas and specific areas that we know Maryland can uniquely lead on, and that includes everything from biotech to cyber to quantum, for our ability to be able to bring a new energy of support for young people and young entrepreneurs. The reason that we pass things like, and I know we can go into later on, but some of the bills that we passed focus on things like access to capital. And if you look at the Access to Banking Act that we passed this year, one of our 10 signature pieces of legislation that we introduced and got passed this year, it was all about how you're increasing liquidity to our small businesses and our low and our moderate income, income communities and neighborhoods, and making sure they're supporting things like MDIs and CDFIs. If we can do those things, this will be Maryland's decade. And if we don't do those things, we have no one to blame but us, because our assets are better than anyone else, and it is time to take the state of Maryland on an 8-year roadshow, and that is exactly what I plan on doing.
All right, so Governor, I have to ask this question because you talked about your dynamic cabinet, right? So everybody in the room knows how competitive you are. That you even had said that you would play a basketball game against the Virginia governors for the FBI headquarters, right? So
you know what's so funny about that too? Now he doesn't answer my phone calls anymore. And you know, someone asked me like a week ago. They're like, "Are you afraid about playing, him in basketball? I heard he's like 6'6". I said, "I don't care if that man is 8'3". I'm not losing." Let's be clear. But now he's not answering my phone calls. So.
All right. Well, I have a follow-up question for that. Then, if you were to compete against any governor in the United States and their cabinet in any sport, what would that sport be? And which cabinet member would you have as your co-captain?
This,
That's a good one. That's
really good.
That's a good one.
As I'm looking at a whole handful right now, I'm like,
for a Fortune 100 company, we're bringing in a Fortune 100 company. Any sport, and who's your co-captain?
Any sport.
Any sport. I played football in high school. I was strong safety.
Strong safety.
And you a wide receiver.
Yes, I was. And you know what wide receivers did? Stay away from strong safety. There was never a reason for a wide receiver to be in a collision with a strong safety. Never.
I got you on this one, though. So in case you picked the wrong one, I got you.
You got my back.
Right.
Listen.
Which sport and which cabinet member?
You know what?
We not taping.
No. I honestly, I can't tell you the one that I would pick.
Okay.
But I can tell you this. And I know we have three here. We have Secretary Wu, Secretary Day, and Secretary Anderson. Are there any other cabinet secretaries that are still here right now? All right, so here's how I do. I'm rocking with them.
What?
I'm rocking with them. But.
Oh man.
In terms of looking at the sport.
Yes.
Let me tell you why, and let me give the example of why I would use these three.
Okay.
Okay. And this is true. So Secretary Wu. Yes, you can give her a round of applause. Secretary Wu, and we're playing football here. That's my left tackle.
Ooh. Ooh.
That's my left tackle. Let me tell you why. So for those who know football, and you know this, left tackle is oftentimes one of the most important positions on the field.
Yes.
Because the left tackle is the person who consistently has to not just cover the blind spot for the quarterback. Every single other option that quarterback has, whether they pass the ball or whether they're running the ball, is really run through that left tackle. If you have a strong left tackle, you could have a mediocre running back. You could have a halfway decent quarterback. You could have a pretty good wide receiver. If you have a left tackle, your team can be successful. And without it, you have no shot of being successful. So that's Secretary Wu as my left tackle.
Wait a minute, can you stand up so everybody can see you, Secretary
Yes.
Wu? Stand up. Oh, God.
That was good.
Okay.
That was good. So, Secretary Anderson, that's my wide receiver.
That was your position.
That was my position.
Okay.
So you know why I think very highly of wide receiver.
Right.
That's my wide receiver. And here's why. You have the right wide receiver. It does not matter who the cornerback is. It doesn't matter who the strong safety is or the free safety is.
That's true.
Because that wide receiver is going to not just get distance and separation. That wide receiver is the person who's keeping the entire defense on notice, because if that wide receiver gets behind you, it's over.
Yep.
It's over. And when you're talking about, when we say we're going to aggressively go out there and go after businesses, recruit and retain the person that can take a catch and turn a 7-yard catch into a 35-yard gain,
It's
that's the person
Secretary
I want
Anderson.
on the end, and that's Secretary Anderson. And my quarterback is Secretary Jake Day. So I have to tell you, when I was first going through the process of thinking about this team and the selection that we wanted to build, there was just an absolute, just a blessing of riches. And I believe deeply that when you look at what the administration has pulled together, that we've been able to go 10 for 10 on the legislative bills that we have introduced. And by the way, all 10 of those bills have been passed with both Democratic and Republican.
Yes.
All 10.
That was awesome. That was awesome.
But also, I think if you look at these first 90-some-odd days, one of the things I'm most proud of is this really is the most extraordinary collection of talent that I would argue that this state has ever seen. And then frankly, I would put this cabinet against any cabinet in the country. And when you think about what it means to have housing and community development, I mean, it's not just a big title and an expansive title. It's a big role.
Yes.
Because it really gets at the core of how do people live?
Indeed.
Not just where they're living. How do they live? How do they exist? How are they seen? How are they interacting with all of these various facets of their individual life? And so as I'm going through the process and thinking about who do you want in this role, that's something that is so expansive. And it really is someone who, and going back to the quarterback piece, it's someone who can see the entire field,
Yes.
right? Someone who knows how to check down. If something is covered, how do you check down to the next receiver? Someone who understands how to fire up an offense when necessary, to calm them down when necessary. And you think about the role that happened as mayor of Salisbury. That's exactly what the quarterback's job is. See the whole field. Understand what the defense is giving you. Check down when necessary. And put together the battle plan in order to continue moving us forward. And so I am so excited about having my left tackle, my wide receiver, and quarterback here all in the room, and that's the team that I'm bringing out to play against any other state.
Okay. All right.
Listen, I'm thinking about what happens after 2 terms. If the Ravens are looking for somebody, I'm there.
Well, Governor Moore, we want to be on that team too, okay? So
Oh, you already are.
META consists of 539 fabulous members. How do we help you in your administration get to the 2030 vision that you have in mind?
Yeah. I need META to win. And so you all are so important in all this because, so for example, when people would say to me, it's really difficult to grow a business in the state of Maryland. My answer was, I had to do one. I know. It's like part of the reason that we actually got into this thing, because there are things that we can do to make ourselves go faster, be bolder, be more inclusive. And I need for META to not just serve as the important, the guides and the supports and the advisors in how the administration moves and thinks about what does it mean to create real measurements of economic growth, but also to be the ones who are generating it and driving it yourselves. Okay. Because when I think about what we're going to be able to do and what we're going to be able to accomplish, I don't think about it as, oh, this is going to be Maryland's state government doing this alone. There's a whole lot that we can and we should be doing from the state government perspective, right? There's a whole lot that we can be doing in how we're going to have all of our various departments that are going to be working together, working collaboratively, and then working to make sure that we're doing things like reducing measurements of regulatory red tape. Yes. So we're giving businesses a chance to grow and to thrive, to making sure that we're actually leveraging the assets that we have here in the state of Maryland. There is no reason, for example, that the state of Maryland right now has 2 available jobs for every single person filing for unemployment. But that's the reality. 2 available jobs for every single person filing for unemployment. And people say to me, well, how does that make sense? It makes sense because we have a dynamic economy in the state of Maryland. We're just not training people to participate in it.
True.
And so there are things that the state can do when it comes to things like job retraining and job reskilling and getting people right-sized for the workforce of now and for the workforce of the future. There are things that the state can do. For example, one thing that we're pushing heavy on is, I love the fact that we have some of the best 4-year colleges in the country here in the state of Maryland. But we will eliminate this myth that every single one of our children have to attend one in order to be successful.
Yes.
And that's not anti-higher education. That's just simply saying that's not the path for every student. And it's also frankly saying it wasn't my path. I joined the Army when I was 17. I went to a 2-year college. That's literally the ring that I wear on my finger is a ring from my 2-year college. Woo. Right? We have 16 remarkable community colleges here in the state of Maryland alone. And so there's things that the state can uniquely do to be able to create better pathways, to drive measurements of economic growth. Just today, I was proud of the fact that I just signed the SERVE Act, which was one of the other bills that we introduced. And Maryland is now, officially today actually, Maryland is now the first state in this country to offer a service year option to high school graduates.
Yes.
First state in the country. So there's a whole lot that the state can do to be able to eliminate red tape, reduce barriers, really create measurements of economic growth. But there's only so much. I think really what comes in now where collaboration and where partnership works is while we're working to eliminate barriers, while we're working to create pathways, what we want from you all, what we want from our businesses, what we want from your partnerships is for us to now be able to have room to be able to move fast, to be able to grow. When we're going out and we're recruiting businesses, we need you all to be our partners and letting us know who are the entities that you're working with that are not yet in the state of Maryland that we need to go out and make sure that we are bringing them here. Who are the folks that are growing in specific industries that we have here? And I mentioned some of them, whether it be quantum or cyber or bio, et cetera, manufacturing areas. What are the industries that we have that are growing and booming and rising in the state of Maryland that we need to come up with ways of incentivizing their growth and incentivizing for them to stay? Because I'm very clear, I refuse to be anybody else's farm system. right? So these are things that I know that we can actually get done in partnership once we create that measure of intentionality. And that's the intentionality that our administration plans on bringing to the role.
Incredible, thank you. So, Governor Moore, you're so dynamic. I don't want to be the only one that gets a chance to ask you questions. We're going to open it up to the floor for two questions.
Oh.
2 questions.
All right.
Okay? So, Richard is going to provide 1 mic to 1 person, and Sandy is going to provide 1 mic to 1 person.
Beautiful.
And these are a succinct question.
You've got to be kidding me.
Governor Moore,
So ready to-
thank you for coming here tonight. We appreciate your presence.
Bless you, thank you.
My question is, how will you help the returning citizens of Baltimore change their path to become successful?
Bless you. And thank you for that question. You know, I want to break up the answer. And what was your name? I'm sorry?
Marshall Pollock.
Marshall. Bless you, Marshall. Miss Marshall, thank you. I want to break up talking about first Baltimore and then for returning citizens, because I think what we're seeing for returning citizens, it's not just a Baltimore issue.
Right.
And these are things we have to do for returning citizens and people who are part of the reentry population throughout the state. But I don't want to lose sight on Baltimore for a second. And I say that for this reason. When I go around the state and I say, you cannot have a thriving Maryland if you do not have a thriving Baltimore. And I know some people will say to me, of course you say that, you're a Baltimorean. Of course you say that, you're a homer. And I say, I don't say that because I'm a homer. I say that because I'm good at math, right? It's the state's largest city. And so name me a single state in this country that is thriving and clicking on all cylinders, and the state's largest city is not. And I'll wait. The answer is there is none. And I've done the research on this, right? If you look at what's happened in Detroit over the past 12 years or so, right? Detroit has had a pretty remarkable growth clip over the past decade. And do you know who the main beneficiary of that has been? Michigan. Michigan's GDP has actually outstripped many other states, and it's simply because Detroit's has. If you look at what's happened in Atlanta over the past 30 years, where Atlanta went from being a sleepy suburban town
Yes.
to now literally Atlanta is rivaling Hollywood in movie productions.
Yes.
Do you know the main beneficiary of that has been? Georgia. Pittsburgh is on fire right now,
It is.
right? Austin, you look at cities that have had these measurements of growth. And the thing that it has resulted in is the state has actually outstripped growth. And so the ability for our state to be able to say, we have got to get Baltimore right, is not because it's good for Baltimore. It's because it matters to the state of Maryland that Baltimore is doing well. Now, it's also impossible to separate the journey for our returning citizens and reentry population from that equation as well. And I say that for this reason too, is, we have had a criminal justice system that oftentimes is treating every sentence like a life sentence.
Yes. It does.
Because when the person comes home, they'll be like, okay, well, welcome home. But remember, you can't live in public housing, even if your family's there. So we have restrictions on where you can live. Or it's saying, welcome home, but remember, there are now certain jobs that you can no longer qualify for forever. And so it's the same reason why we have people who are consistently finding themselves difficult and not just, difficult to employ or unemployable. We're literally talking about for things that happened in the 1980s, in the 1990s. Or it's like, welcome home, and you can go to college, but remember, you no longer qualify for many grants and scholarships anymore. But welcome home, and we wish you the best of luck. And we cannot forget that the reason that we have had such a high recidivism rate and the propensity for people to be rearrested after they come back home is if you continue not to allow opportunities for people to be able to participate in economies, they will find a way to survive, and oftentimes it will not be good for our larger society. And so our ability to be able to think through the lifting of these type of barriers for people who are returning back home, our ability to be able to, and you'll see with our administration, that we are going to be aggressively moving on things like expungements. Because to continue having limitations on what you can do for things that were historically done, that's now not allowing you to create a future for yourself or for your family, it's the reason that we have these massive oases of generational poverty that exist, which will not allow us to have measurements of economic growth that I know each and every one of us want for everyone in this state. And so it's a core focus for what we're trying to do, not just in Baltimore, but how we're thinking about the reentry population and really reintegrating people back into our society as a long-term focus, because we got to do a better job of both preparing society for individuals' reentry and also preparing individuals for their societal reentry, because we're talking about 95% of people who are incarcerated, they are coming home. And if we're not smarter as a society about that, it'll be to the detriment of everybody in our society.
Good evening, Governor Moore.
Good evening.
My name is Joe Hurst. I work for Montgomery County Economic Development Corporation.
Excellent.
Thank you for being here this evening. I really appreciated your comment about signing your first contract when you were 17 years old. I did the same thing, sir. And I really appreciated what the Army taught me, how those lessons made me a better man, made me a better worker. And so I was hoping that you could just comment on how the Army has kind of brought you to where you are, the lessons that you learned that you carry with you through your governorship. And you talked about the 8-year road show. I think it may be 6. But I really appreciate those comments, and hope you can expound on that and just tell a little bit about how that has made you who you are and kind of directed your path.
Bless you, and thank you so much, and go Army.
Cool.
I really appreciate that, and it's funny. I think that there's a few big things that I think I know I've taken. I mean, I've taken a lot, but there's a couple big things that I've taken from my experience in the Army that I use every day and has helped to shape how I view the world. One is the importance of leadership. And what's really interesting is, and I learned this from the military, and actually I got this from military school. I was sent to military school when I was 13 years old. I had some issues when I was 13.
Right.
But I was sent away from military school when I was 13. And then it ended up really changing my life. And I remember something they did when you first arrive in the military school. They don't care who you are, they don't care about your background, they're gonna put you all through the same basic training or plebe system, and it's horrible. And it's intentionally horrible, right? Because there is a point that they want to break down the individual because they're going to build up the collective. And so but one of the things they start doing very early is they're gonna put you in charge of something very quickly, right? And it's gonna be something small, but they want you to get that feeling of responsibility. And so, like, for example, they're gonna say, okay, all right, Moore, you're now in charge of this ballroom, right? And if the ballroom is clean, we're gonna congratulate you. And if the ballroom is dirty, then Lord help you, right? And let's say I see Tammi and say, you're drinking a bottle of water, right? And she's drinking a bottle of water, and let's say she throws a bottle of water on the ground. Well, I'm scooping her up because I'm like, listen, I'm not gonna get in trouble because you can't find a trash can.
Right.
But then they notice that, and they're like, okay, this ballroom is pretty clean. Nice job, Moore. And now they're gonna put me in charge of something a little bit more. Now I'm in charge of now I have a squad, right? And so I've got a group of people that are under my command. And let's say you show up late for school one day, right? Or you show up late for one of your trainings. The leader of the training or the instructor is gonna walk up to you, and they're not gonna say, why are you late? They're gonna walk up to you and say, who's your squad leader? And they're gonna come find me. And they're gonna ask me, Tammi was 5 minutes late for instruction today. Why? Well, I need to have an answer because I'm in charge, right? So I guarantee you will be 5 minutes early for training tomorrow, right? Because it's my responsibility. And then there's this graduated sense of responsibility that I think is not only introduced to everybody, but people take to. Because you want that feeling and you want that understanding and that belonging. And the irony is, I always tell people, it's not that, when people talk about what's happening oftentimes in neighborhoods and communities and all this, and they're like, it's so complicated. No, it's not. It's the same structure that you have within military organizations or Fortune 500 companies. When people are starting off in any organization, it's like you start off with something and then there's this graduated sense of responsibility. It's a carbon copy model. That leadership that the military taught, that understanding of being able to work together, the feeling of knowing that there are going to be difficult choices and difficult decisions. And you've got to build the right kind of coalitions to make those difficult choices and difficult decisions. And guess what? You're going to get up tomorrow morning and you're going to make some more tough decisions. That's something that they train us for, that they prepare us for. But I tell you the other thing that that really resonated with me in the military. It's this sense of teamwork and camaraderie. I think about, and it's part of the reason why the SERVE Act was so important to sign today, because I do believe deeply that in this time of political divisiveness,
Yes.
in this time of this political vitriol, at a time when people seem to care more about where the idea came from than is it a good idea. I think about what it was when we were campaigning for governor. I had people who I served with in Afghanistan, and they came and door knocked on my behalf. Many of the people who came to campaign for me, they weren't Marylanders. Many of the people who came to campaign for me, they weren't Democrats. But they came to knock on doors all around the state, simply asking people and telling people, let me tell you about the guy that I served with. Because that's what mattered. Service is sticky. And those who serve together will generally stay together. And the whole point that we want from not just the service year option that Maryland is now leading on, but in the entire frame of why we want this to be the state that serves, is we want our state to get to know each other again. We want our state to get to know the different parts of the state and to talk to each other and to not be simply confined to what a cable news network tells you about your neighbor. Because I believe deeply that you cannot claim to love a country if you hate half of the people in it.
True.
You can't.
That's true.
I want this state to get to know each other. I want them to work together. I want us to sacrifice together. I want us to build together. And I want us to win together. And if people say, well, why do you think that can work? Or why is that so important? My answer is, and because of my time in the service, I saw it firsthand. I know this thing can work, and I know it's going to work in the state of Maryland.
Governor Moore, thank you so much for coming and spending some time with us here at NEDA. I think I can speak for everybody and say, we love you.
I love you back. I love you back. And I got to tell you, I am so excited to work closely with you. I really am. I'm excited to make sure that we're working closely together in the policies that we are pushing.
Yes.
I want to make sure that we are working closely together in the businesses that we are helping to develop. I want to make sure that we are working closely together in the communities that we are helping to nourish. I want to make sure that we are working closely together with the workers that we're helping to support and the entrepreneurs that we're helping to uplift. I want to make sure we are working together every single step of the way. This is going to be Maryland's decade, period. It's our time.
Yes.
And I can't wait for us to do this together. So I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Yes. Right.
bills with this. Sign some bills with this.
All right.
How about one more big round of applause for Governor Moore and for Tammi Thomas? Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you very much. We really appreciate it.
I really appreciate you. Thank you.
Go on. Go on.